Hello, so my name is James. This is my assistant Kylie. So today we'll be talking to you about the overhead squat and certain impairments that it comes with. Specifically, we're going to talk about valgus knees because that is the adductor complex internally rotating as well as the underactive hip and hip flexor group to go with it. Now what happens in this is that it puts an unnecessary amount of pressure on the medial knee, and creates the overactive adductors and the underactive hip flexor group. So next we're going to see what this looks like. So she's going to hold her hands up high, she's going to go down into a squat, and her knees are going to internally rotate as well as adduct closer to her midline. So here we see an underactive hip flexor group in her TFL and her glute medius, as well as we see the tight lateral gastroc because all these muscles are shortening and condensing and pulling her knee closer inward. So we also see her, you can't really see it, but it's her internally rotated knees have created a lot of pressure on her adductor complex. The adductor complex is what allows you to swing your leg in like this. So those are going to be tight as well. So how do we fix this problem? Well, what we do is we have to find ways to lengthen that adductor complex and strengthen that TFL and hip flexor group. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over some corrective exercises to help possibly fix this problem. So first we're going to do inhibition. Inhibition is basically keeping that muscle stable and not letting it overperform in any area. So to start this off, she is going to lay down on her back sideways to the camera. We do not have a band, so we're just going to imagine that there is a band here. She's going to put her knees at 90 degrees and picture a band around the midfoot of her feet, and she is just going to extend one and bring it back in and then alternate. Let's do that 5 times. Perfect. And so we see here that is one thing that helps. This, however, though, I only did 5, but is often seen in sets of 20 because it is something that you're trying to regain the control of and focus of. So next we are going to talk about the lengthening period. So a lot of times this is just referred to as stretching, making sure that it's long and it's not tight, which the adductor complex will get tight if you have these valgus knee squats. So one thing we're going to do is she's just going to stand straight, hip shoulder width apart. She's going to step one way. She's going to step forward, posterior pelvic tilt, and then lean forward. And she's going to hold that for about 15 seconds. Fast forward 15 seconds. This typically is done in time frames of 30 seconds though, just because that is the standard amount of time for a static stretch usually. So now doing that both sides obviously, not just one side. But next we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the activation period. So once you finally have retrained that muscle and made it flexible again, you now have to start activating it again and working the way you need it to work. So to do this, I have my candle only because I do not have a foam roller. So typically you want to do this with a foam roller, but what she's going to do is she's going to pinch this between her knees. She's going to squeeze it, which fires that adductor complex, and then she's going to do a glute bridge. She's going to stay up, and she's going to go down. And she's going to do that 10 times. And we also notice with this exercise too, that as she does this, she is working on her glutes. So it also is helping that underactive hip flexor group to go with it. So, all right. So now that we have activated the muscle again, that's also something that's typically done more than just 10 times. It's done roughly 20 rep range. But for the sake of time, we're going to do it that way. So lastly, we have the integration phase. Integration phase is where you just apply everything you've learned and how you've retrained your muscle into getting back into performance-like activities, things that you're going to be doing in your actual event or sport or whatever it may be. So for this, we're just going to keep it simple with a sideways lunge. What she's going to do is she's just going to stand with her feet hip width apart. She's going to step to one side and get down and back up, and then the other leg. And right there, we'll do that about 10 times. And right there, we see that right here, this movement, works on strengthening that adductor complex and causes it to go back to performing it the way it was, whether that's performing a cutting move or even as simple as doing the overhead squat. So, now that we have learned all those corrective exercise techniques, you now know how to correct somebody who has overhead squat knee valgus issues. Thank you.